Seek out the best. 2 words to describe the activity.
The Yoruba Unity Forum is conducted.
Be the first to know. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa. We break the news. Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV Primetime
Our
News.
24-hour news station.
All right, the clouds are gathering for the much talked about general elections in 2015, but we're still here in October, 4 more days before the end of the month, and we're basking in the euphoria of being alive, waking up, hale and hearty. Congratulations to you. I am Nifemi Oguntoye, and welcome to your ultimate news and current affairs program, Core Digest, where we bring you in-depth review of political issues and every other human interest stories that we believe you will be interested in and of course impact positively on your decisions as you go by your day. Today, let's quickly find out what the top stories are today on some of Nigerian newspapers. I have the Punch, the Vanguard, the Nation, as well as the Guardian newspaper. And joining me on set already is Gbola Oba. Good morning, and thank you for joining us again today.
I know you've been wanting to whack me in the face for long. You shouldn't have been in front of the camera that you'll be...
It's all right. You're welcome to Core Digest. Let's quickly find out what the top stories are today on the Punch newspaper. Obasanjo replies Buhari, Muslim ticket, dangerous for Nigeria. And the writer here says, we've noted ex-president's advice, says the APC. You get details of that on page 10 of the Punch. To other stories quickly, 8 years after, abandoned children reunite with father. That's on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch. And FIFA gives Nigeria today to resolve NFF crisis. That's on page 71. I didn't ask Amechi for Rivers money. That's not me. It's the First Lady, Patience Jonathan. You get details on page 17 of the Punch. The front page picture here, praying for Nigeria from left to right, is the Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano, an unnamed government official, President Goodluck Jonathan, and Akwa Ibom State Governor Godswill Akpabio in faraway Israel. Robbers right Lagos residents demand end-of-year gifts. That's on page 5. Federal government to collect toll at border posts, page 14. Displaced Boko Haram victims survive on grass, says Catholic Church on page 17. Gbola, let's start with the front page topic here, the front page story. Obasanjo replies Buhari, Muslim ticket, dangerous for Nigeria. This will remind you of the 1993 elections, I suppose, where we had a Muslim ticket and Nigerians looked beyond the the religious borders.
To be honest with you, it amounts to lack of good judgment on the side of Buhari to even have broached it this time around. We've moved past that era. So many waters have passed under the bridge. And it shows, as some would ordinarily say, that the man is still insensitive, is still unreasonable, and may actually have a dint of bigotry in his blood. I think the man needs to re-examine himself very critically.
Why are you slamming him so hard?
No, to be honest with you,
the last time he contested, his vice president was a pastor, for crying out loud.
No, for all I care, to be honest with you, if he could have the lack of judgment to say what he said in this instance and at this point in Nigeria's political history, it shows that the man is somewhat insensitive.
But,
so integrity...
Possibly you're not getting it right from this platform. I mean, Buhari hasn't picked a vice president
to have even broached it, that is what I used, broach.
Okay.
To have even broached it, it shows insensitivity. It shows lack of good judgment. It shows, and it's going to be useful to those who see him as a man who is driven by bigotry. For me, I don't really care. I don't belong to his party. neither belong to PDP nor his party, but he has not done those who are working hard enough for him, you know, to unseat the incumbent government. He has not done them any favor with such remarks.
You're saying a Muslim ticket at this time is not.
It's contest. You know, some people may sit down in the comfort of their living rooms and be saying, you know what, we've done it in the past. What is wrong with it? Buhari Fashola, Buhari Gbola Tinubu, Buhari whatever. But the reality of this country now, did we have Boko Haram then?
It's all right. Let's quickly move away from there to find other stories on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this Monday. Presidency 2015, Muslim ticket dangerous, says Ambassador. Another paper taking up that story. That's on page 9, if you care to check on the Vanguard. Presidency, Amechi's war deepens. He's a rascal, says Presidency. Point to one thing you've done in Rivers. That's Amechi speaking. Says federal government cared less during Gbola days in Rivers. And the front page picture here shows Jonathan in Jerusalem. President Goodluck Jonathan acknowledging cheers from some Nigerian pilgrims during his visit to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. That was on Saturday. INEC risks contempt over 3,000 polling units. That's on page 9. And Nigeria at risk over falling oil prices, says federal government. That's on page 8 of the Vanguard. Well, let's start with this.
Federal government has finally honed up to the fact that the depleting revenue from oil may ultimately affect us. I thought somebody was saying it didn't really matter a couple of days ago. These people, God bless them.
The coordinating minister says there's no cause for alarm, or no alarm for cause. What do we say now? Well, the presidency, you know, in a war of words again with the River State governor.
Amechi may be a stormy petrel of a sort. Amechi may be an unguarded, a loose ball of a sort politically, but, you know, he made some point when he was asking those rhetorical questions. The first Port Harcourt refinery was built by Tafawa Balewa. The LMA petroleum facility was built by IBB and Abacha.
Okay.
And he enumerated so many things that former northern Muslim heads of state had facilitated that had benefited that region. And he asked rhetorically, what has your brother, Goodluck Jonathan, done for you people? Now, let's be very honest with ourselves. At this juncture, if President Goodluck Jonathan had done anything worthwhile, his aides would not have been exchanging words with Amechi. They ordinarily would have been enumerating the things he has done, worthy enough for his people. It is a sad story that in 2014, about emerging to 2015, a Southerner president could not even have finished the East-West Road, which ordinarily would have imbued commerce in that area by at least minimum of 5 to 10%. It's sad.
Let me quickly acquaint you with an excerpt from our news item. This is what Ruben Abati said. He says, notwithstanding the immunity, he, speaking as regards Amechi now, currently enjoys, a day of reckoning would come when Amechi would answer for all his false allegations against Mr. President, his wife, and the federal government. Does it sound like a preacher man?
You know, it sounds more like a blackmailer. It sounds more like a blackmailer trying to tell the guy not to say what he believes to be right.
It's all right.
You know, but they don't need all that if his principal officer had done the right thing. Technically now, President Goodluck Jonathan has spent more than 4 years as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. 1 year in acting capacity, 3+ years in substantive this thing. It's unfortunate. That's his neighborhood. That's his own neck of the hood. What has he done? Okay, gave a university to them in Bayelsa. Is that Is that all it can point to?
You know, the question that comes to mind is, what does this make of the quality of leadership we have when we have men at the top trading words like this?
Politics is in the nature. Look, I was once a politician in quote-unquote a mature democracy in England. Wherever you have bipartisanship, wherever you have partisanship, people will ask questions. It's good for democracy. You know, having to be treating the president as though is an untouchable and no question should be asked of him, it's not good for the democracy.
Let's go away quickly from there.
He campaigned promising people that he was going to do something for them. They have the right to ask him 4 years down the road, what have you done for us? It's simple. Legitimate.
On the back page of the Vanguard for some sports now, the world is fed up with Nigeria, says Hayati.
About time.
FIFA hammer dangles and President Jonathan to receive Falcons West. But irrespective of all the, you know, uprising in courts now, in and out of court, the female footballer seems to be doing well.
To be honest with you, we'll say kudos to the girls. But you and I know that in the world of football, the male trophies still counts the female trophies any day, any time. Okay. But it's good for our girls. It's good that some of them will make careers out of it. Some of them will beat, the punks of poverty through some of these accomplishments. But the truth is, football, as it's been managed now, especially by politicians in football boardrooms, is not doing our status, is not doing our image, is not doing...
Well, you know, one would wonder how the technical team for the Falcons could swim out clean out of all of these, you know, outcries, out of all of these up and downs in the Nigerian Football Federation and come out to win medals.
You know, it's the raw talent in the girls.
It's all right.
The raw talent in the girls, and more so because some of those girls were discovered playing with boys. These are naturally tomboyish characters who, when they were young, were literally having a kickabout with their brothers and, you know, neighborhood male boys. So the rate at which they approach football.
So you're saying the male team doesn't have raw talent? Is that what you're saying?
No, we do. And that, you must remember that we are still the incumbent champion of Africa. Okay, irrespective of the madness that has prevailed.
We're still battling hard to qualify for Morocco.
Whichever way you look at it, technically we are this juncture. We are still the champion of Africa.
Although our rating has fallen
we may not even qualify for the next round, for the next round of the final. But we are still where we are at this juncture.
Let's move away quickly from there. We have the nation right here now. Boko Haram abducts 30 boys, girls in another raid. The writer here says Cameroon kills 39 sect fighters. The front page picture of the nation shows an interesting one. It's tagged Mission to Nigeria. Do we have the paper right now, The Nation? And of course, here you see the German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier on the right side, and French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius on board a plane on the way to Abuja at the airport in Paris. Oh, I'm afraid you don't have that picture right here, but they are coming down here to speak on security situation and Ebola virus disease in West Africa. And to other stories on the front page of The Nation, APC, Fayose bought 43 million naira Range Rover. There we go. Party alleges squandermania. And this reminds me, Gbola, of the kind of vehicle that Fayose brought to his inauguration. It was one very old Mercedes-Benz. They call it 1970-something or thereabout. But in recent times, we've been having this war of words between the incumbent governor and the outgone governor of Ekiti. We saw Fayose bringing out pictures of bedrooms in the new government house and saying that Fayose spent close to 50 million naira on one bed. Do you think these are issues that should be relevant at this time?
You see, I've always stated that when you have squabbles between major political characters and major political parties, it's good for the democracy. It's good for our democracy because when people know that issues such as the kind of vehicles they buy, issues such as the kind of beds, you know, they use state resources to buy may ultimately become a stigmatizing issue. They'll be sober. You see, by nature as human beings, sobriety sometimes is enforced on us by the knowledge that we may be accountable for some of the decisions we take. And you see, for me, where I am now, I used to have a lot of respect for Fayemi because I knew him in England. Okay. You know, and apart from knowing him in England, I think I know the character of the man in him. But with some of the stories we're getting to hear now, especially, forget about the one Fayose is saying, within, you know, behind the cameras, some of the things we're getting to hear about people who served with him, I'm utterly disappointed in the Fayemi, and I'm further convinced now. I used to work for governors across Nigeria. When I was in England and I used to do this kind of job, you know, I used to work for heads of state across Africa and governors across Nigeria. I remember about 10 or 11 years ago, I flew back to England and I was saying before the camera that given what I saw to be the natural disposition of the people around governors in Nigeria, they were being made to think they were demigods. It has not changed tremendously, and when you teach human beings like that, they have a tendency to think that they are God and want to act like God.
So, you know,
and that is the unfortunate part of it for me regarding Fayemi. Fayose had always known. You know, I used to work for Fayose. I used to earn good money from Fayose. I used to, you understand what I'm saying? Fayose had always known.
But are you sure that Fayose is not giving Ekiti people good reasons for underperformance with all of these reports of money being squandered, the state being greatly indebted, and all of that?
No, even the indebtedness has been put to be exaggerated, and that is in the nature of Fayose, to exaggerate things that he believes will stigmatize his opposition.
But that's coming from a man who has worked with him, right? Oh,
I'm telling you what I know of the man. This is not that I'm reading newspaper. What I know, it is in his nature to hyperbolize or over-accentuate those things that may stigmatize or rubbish his opposition. But you know what? Fayose or no Fayose in this picture, Fayemi goofed big time.
Let's move away quickly from that.
Some of the information we're getting now are inconsistent with what one used to think he knew of his sober personality, emotional and intellectual.
It's all right. And to other stories quickly on the front page of The Nation this morning, protest as PDP sacks Ondo Exco. That's on page 8. And FIFA hammer looms over NFF, page 24. Banks' earnings decline to persist, page 25 of The Nation. Just before we leave this particular newspaper, Gbola, Boko Haram abduct another 30 boys, girls in another raid. I mean, how does that strike you?
The ceasefire, the so-called ceasefire, I think at this juncture one can confidently use the word so-called ceasefire, should not be, it is not worth the paper. If there was any paper, it's signed on. They promised to even release the girls today. I'm eagerly waiting. I've told you the penultimate time I was with you, I told you that if they released the girls last Tuesday or last Monday, then I was going to find the nearest point to me to pick my Boko Haram membership card. They did
Boko Haram nomination form.
Membership card.
It's all right. Our final point of call is The Guardian. The Guardian newspaper this Monday. Ebola virus epidemic in Africa poised to explode. WHO convenes a meeting of industry leaders over vaccine, says cases hit 10,141 with 4,922 deaths. Mali seeks to contain fears after girl dies. Well, away from there, government records 762.79 billion naira revenue shortfall, poor budget execution, in first quarter. And onto other news notes, 4 feet killed as soldiers occupied Delta community. Obasanjo cautions against same religion ticket. Buhari, a populist contestant, and his many challenges. There's actually one many there. Page 16 of The Guardian. Okay, it's day 169. Bring Back Our Girls campaign still on, and this is where you know, all your excitement dampers because you are reminded that over 196, right, there are over 200 Nigerian girls still being abducted. Okay, Gbola, the front page picture here shows a map of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Nigeria was confirmed earlier last week as officially Ebola-free.
By the World Health Organization has been Ebola-free, yeah.
But that's not the case in other West African countries.
Unfortunately, but to be honest with you, it's about time the international community, especially countries that could help, countries like North of America, the EU countries that can really help, to help articulate a formidable strategy against this pandemonium, this thing, to really come to it early in time, because it's shown now that no country is totally,
I was kind of a little bit excited to hear that even Mali now quarantines US.
No, it's not about the passport you carry. It's about the fact that have you manifested symptoms of Ebola? If you've manifested symptoms of Ebola and you're the president of the United States of America, you should be quarantined. That's where we are at this juncture.
Okay, let's quickly touch on some sports stories here, if we have some on The Guardian, I guess.
No,
okay.
You want to touch on sports now. Is it about Togri or whatever? When you know I'm emotional, is it about the sports of Togri or whatever?
Let's just see some sports stories here quickly before we leave the papers this morning. Nigeria faces ban over Phoenix third trip to Namibia, and ex-Olympian Okpara Thompson opens sports center in Abuja. NFF crisis, Blatter Hayatu furious with Nigeria, and Jonathan, 36 governors ministers to receive victorious Falcons on Wednesday. I believe that wraps it on the dailies this morning. Let's just quickly now go into our topic of discussion today, this Monday, as we begin to talk politics, internal democracy between consensus and primary elections. Few months away before the much talked about general election in 2015, and there are questions as regards what process and what procedure should bring the right candidate on the platforms of the different political parties that we have in Nigeria. But let's start from here, Gbola. Of course, you are aware that for the APC, there is General Muhammadu Buhari and the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who by now have shown their interest, of course, collected the nomination form.
And Governor
Kwankwaso of Kano State. But what way forward will it be for these parties? As of this morning, General Mohammed is saying that consensus is the way to go. The other candidates are saying, no, that was the reason why we missed out in the last election.
General Mohammed would naturally say consensus is the best way to go because, come to think of it, it does not command too much resources in the first place. The party primaries are usually very tasking, very exacting processes and procedure. It does demand a lot of resources from the aspirants before a candidate emerges. He does not have it. Okay. So from where he is now, he would naturally be scheming for a form of consensus, a form of consensus to help alleviate his, the circumstance of his presumed emergence.
But given his the grand reception that he had while he was declaring his interest, for the first time we saw APC party stakeholders rallying around him. One would think that he is popular enough not to be scared of a primary election?
No, to be honest with you, he also said, subsequent to the declaration, that the nomination form that he collected, he had to get people to contribute money for him to be able to collect the nomination form. He does not have much resources. And resources, a lousy amount of resources that are needed to run the treadmill of the primaries in parties. This is no comedy. And then, so he naturally presumes that being the most formidable candidate, formidable personality in the ranks or portfolio of APC aspirants, he should just be, anointed or acclaimed, kind of, as the party's...
Do you think he is? Because I read earlier in the news about what is known as NOI polls.
No,
here is a new poll conducted by NOI that actually puts people like Fashola, people like the governor of Edo State, as being more popular and acceptable by Nigerians even than the general.
Hello, I need to advise those of you who are journalists. There are so many open and indirect frauds perpetrated during electioneering period in all democracies. Go and check the antecedents of the characters behind each of these polling entities. My brother, even in respectable democracies, we get to know the proclivity, the ideological proclivity of those who conduct polls. In Nigeria, I can afford to tell you 1,000,000%, and I stand to be challenged or taken to court by any polling agency that believes that they are above the board. They are all sponsored by political parties. All sponsored. If you just on top of this NOI, this thing, especially the human beings behind it, you will discover that they are working for politicians.
You'll say categorically that this poll is deceptive.
Gbola Oba is saying that I have not seen a polling agency in Nigeria that should be respected. All of them are smart boys, smart characters, trying to make money from electioneering this thing. Because you understand what I'm saying? I can afford. If you can bring any one of them, invite them. You have a platform. Let's sit down. And I would research the name of the person who is coming to face me, and I will tell you what he was doing 6 months before, 1 year before, 2 years before. So you have to be very reluctant and very reticent in the way you bang polling results, especially in Nigeria. It's jam for the boys.
No, our own responsibility is to report
you cannot
what
just
happens. We are not in any way endorsing
even in reportage, even in the art of reporting the news, you must try to at least look beyond the veneer.
We did that. I'm sure you saw that report where a face was given.
You must be
as regards
you must be saying that
the coordinating minister of Nigeria being a face probably behind it. But let's quickly move away from there.
Is your station not my station? But Gbola Oba knows, from my experience having done the job you're doing now before, that 99.9% of the times, even in the advanced democracies, polling is ideologically based. And I can afford to say with a degree of conceit that in Nigeria is a stratagem for boys to make good money during electioneering period. And most of these boys usually serve political godfathers.
I googled the two concepts of this course earlier, consensus and primary election. Now, consensus decision-making, according to Google, says it's a group decision-making process that seeks consent of all participants, an acceptable resolution, one that can be supported, even if not the favorite of each individual. Now, the other one talks about an election that narrows the field of candidates before an election for office. In your own informed opinion, which of these two processes do you think is more suitable for this client?
We claim to be a democracy. Ordinarily, in a democracy, ostensible electioneering should be the ideal. But we all know that sometimes the ideal does not necessarily prevail. Even in the most advanced democracies, the APC was the other day lambasting the PDP for having used consensus to nominate the person of President Gbola Jonathan. Okay. The truth is that in most advanced democracies, once you are the ruling party, your candidate, who is usually the president or the prime minister, is usually obliged the right of first refusal for this thing. At the last, I was asking somebody in APC who was lambasting PDP for choosing President Gbola Jonathan as their consensus candidate. I said, you know what? In the last general elections in America, when did you see Obama going around the Democratic thing, trying to get renominated? It was almost automatically chosen. So that's the tradition. But amongst
obviously we saw a debate between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton.
No, that was the first.
Okay, you were referring to the second.
The second, when he was when he was renominated.
Okay.
It was more of an ordination. It was more of an an acclamation.
But does APC even has the credibility?
No, don't confuse. I'm not saying APC. I said the PDP.
I understand.
Because the PDP has a sitting president. They have the right to use consensus and acclamation or whatever they want to call it to choose their candidate in their incumbent.
Is it democratic enough? Because there are also voices. There is.
Was it democratic when the Democratic Party in America renominated President Obama through consensus and acclamation? It was, and it's not. Obama was not the first person to enjoy that. I remember Ronald Reagan. I remember George Walker Bush. The junior. I remember George the senior. It was even when he was defeated by even when he was eventually defeated by Bill Clinton. So it's the tradition that when you have a sitting president and the majority of your party members believe that he could give you a strategic advantage in this thing, you nominate him by popular acclaim.
Okay, we're wrapping up now. Do you think this also should be applicable to the opposition party?
I don't necessarily think it should be applicable to the opposition party. I think they should have something akin to a robust machinery of election to select their candidate. But you know what? If they ultimately resolve to do it by consensus, there's nothing unconstitutional about it. I am just one who believes that I want to see what will emerge post such a consensus. If some characters in PDP will not be running out again back to whence they came from. I hope. I hope that consensus will be consensual enough that post consensus, some funny characters in PDP who have gotten used to political coquettishness and flirtatiousness will not be running back to their primary zone of prostitution, ideological prostitution.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on Cold Digest today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity once again.
Exciting to have you always.
Pleasure, yeah. Honored and humbled to always be called upon. I'm grateful.
We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll open the phone lines for you to participate as we welcome another guest on the show. Don't go away.